Hey there, Coder woman! Are you ready for new challenges? I have great news for you. We've just finished coding the entire project. We've got all the sections ready. It's a big achievement. You've come so far. You've already faced so many challenges and gained a lot of experience. And now you can make different elements in HTML and CSS. Good job! In this project, I taught you different sections with different elements and techniques, so you could learn as much as possible. Of course, creating the first project in your life is always the hardest. As you build more websites, you might face some difficulties, but you're now familiar with many concepts. Sometimes you'll only need to refresh your memory, but you've already learned so much about HTML and CSS. Huge congratulations to you for reaching this point. Do you still remember the 7 steps of the web development process? We've completed the first 3 steps. That's great news. Now we'll move on to steps 4 and 5, testing, review, and optimization. It might sound a bit boring, but trust me, it's a really interesting part of a web developer's job. This part is my favorite. There's always something to fix, something to improve. It's like being a detective, searching for what's not right, thinking about the best way to solve it. And often, it's not easy. Finding what's wrong can be challenging. So what we'll be doing in the next few days? Today, we'll focus on responsive web design, adapting our project for different mobile devices. Get ready for a really exciting adventure. We'll face some puzzles to solve. You'll learn all about the best practices in responsive web design. That's our learning path for today. Before we dive in, let me give you a quick summary of the challenges you'll face in the next few days. After changing the layout for mobile devices, we'll move to a very interesting part that will take a few days. I'll teach you the basics of JavaScript. It's going to be some seriously advanced work. Often, web development courses for beginners skip JavaScript, focusing only on HTML and CSS at first. But JavaScript is really the first true programming language you'll learn. That's why it's challenging. It requires a different mindset and approach. However, by reaching this point, you've proven you're ready for it. My job will be to guide you through the basics of this language in a clear, engaging, and fun way. You'll see, it won't be that bad. I want you to have a solid foundation in all 3 pillars of web development. We'll use this JavaScript knowledge to make our project even better. It's going to be a lot of fun. Remember when I said learning JavaScript can take months, even years? That's still true. It's a long journey. But don't worry. We are not going to cover all of the JavaScript concepts. It's not the goal of this challenge. We'll focus on the basics, which is enough to start creating cool effects on websites. After a few days of JavaScript lessons, we'll move on to optimizing our project. We'll improve the project's accessibility and page loading speed. You'll learn how to verify and improve these elements. Then we'll optimize the project for search engines. A good project should also be easy to find online, right? And finally, we'll launch the project on the web. Yes, your completed project will be visible to others. As you can see, we have many challenges and still much work ahead of us. By the end, you'll be able to create a website from start to finish. Plus, your projects will not only be well-made, but also well-optimized and follow best practices. That's the goal of this course. You're doing really well. Keep going and enjoy it. You're on the path to becoming a great coder woman. Alright, let's get started with responsive web design and its basics first. You'll learn what it is, why it's important, and the best ways to do it. First, why do we need responsive web design? I'll show you. Look at how our page appears on a phone screen. When I make the browser smaller, everything gets mixed up. Things overlap, don't fit, and some parts are hard to see or missing. This is how our website looks on a phone. And that's why we need to spend some time to fix it. Why is fixing this important? Remember, 60% of all people visiting websites use mobile devices. That's a big number. I'll tell you a secret. Our website doesn't look too bad. We've already used some responsive web design ideas during our work. Without this, it would have been worse. For example, we used rem units and flexbox, making the layout flexible. Do you remember using percentage widths instead of fixed sizes in the contact info section? It lets section change size based on the browser window. These are examples of responsive web design techniques we've already used. Now we'll do even more. But first, let's talk about the main ideas of responsive web design. First, the web page design should be based on a fluid layout. It means our website should adjust to different screen sizes. We do this by using flexbox and relative units. And of course, we should avoid static units. Also, we need to manage elements like sidebars on the page edges. For mobile, we can hide these elements or change their display. For example, instead of putting the image and text side by side in the About Me section, it's better to stack them one on top of the other. The second key idea in responsive web design is about adjusting images and videos. We must ensure they fit well in the space, but still look natural and not stretched, with good proportions. We've done this in the About Me section already. Then there's typography. It's important not to use the same font size on desktops and mobile screens. We need to change the font size for different devices. We'll work on this soon. Finally, we have media queries. This name might sound strange, but it's a very useful way to change layouts for different screen sizes. And breakpoints are closely related to media queries. What exactly are breakpoints? They're like secret signals telling the website, it's time to change the layout because it's not looking good on this screen size. It's like when I adjusted the page width to show you how our website looks on a phone. At a certain width, we realize the page doesn't look good now. We need to change the layout here. That specific width, where we decide to change things, is called a breakpoint. Breakpoints help make sure the website looks good and is easy to use on any screen size. Now let's look at the common breakpoints used in web development today. We'll also be applying them in our project. Remember, these values might differ depending on the project. However, there is one rule that applies to all. They are always used for phones, tablets, and small and large computers. Here are the specific window widths we'll be working with. Of course, the world is full of different devices with different screen sizes. You need to know that breakpoints are very general and can't cover all sizes exactly. We can't make the layout perfect for every device. That's why having a fluid layout is so important. So we understand what breakpoints are. But how can we use them in code? How do we tell the browser to change the layout at these points? Here's where media queries come into play. They let us write specific styles for specific screen widths. Let me show you an example in CodePen, okay? Then breakpoints and media queries will become clear. Look at this. A message in the middle asks to resize the window to see the color change. The background is now orange. Now I'll start changing the window size and watch what happens. The background changed to blue. Wow! I keep going and there's another change, this time to green. And all I did was change the window width. It's a responsive web design in action. The page changes its look. when we hit a specific breakpoint. Different styles are activated while the previous ones stop working. Let's review the code in this example to understand media queries better. I'm going to make the CSS window bigger for a clearer view. Here are the initial styles for the content element. There's a background color set to FF6347. That's the first color you see. Now let's focus on the most exciting part, the code below. A comment in this code says media query for tablets. Here's where it gets interesting. The first line starts with add media at the beginning. Then, in the parentheses, we have max width and 768 pixels. This is how we write media queries. It means the styles inside will only apply if the browser window's width is no more than 768 pixels. So if the width is 900 pixels, it won't work. But at 650 pixels, it will. Inside, there's a new background color for the content element, blue this time. Next, there's a media query for mobile phones, set at a maximum width of 600 pixels, changing the color to green. What can we learn from this code? Let's check it from the bottom up. From 0 to 600 pixels in width, the background will be green, right? Above 600 pixels, the green color no longer works. Why? Because here we have another condition. Up to a width of 768 pixels, the background will be blue. Above 768 pixels, the default color applies. Because it's the default in any other case, not specified by a media query. Look at it again. As I make the window smaller, the color changes from orange to blue, and then to green. When I return, it changes from green to blue and finally to orange. Media queries work like this. They're not just for changing background colors. They can change text colors, move elements, or even hide them. Now, what do you think will happen when I resize the window? If you've guessed, great. If not, watch this. I'm reducing the window width and the text disappears as the background changes. It's gone until the window gets larger again, with an orange background. Cool, right? It's a simple but powerful tool for creating cool effects. Here's a summary of how to write a media query. Start with add media. In parentheses, set the condition that must be met. And inside, write the styles as you would normally. Of course, there are many more conditions beside max width. For example, we can define styles for prints, not just screens. But this is a broad topic, and I recommend you explore it on your own time. A great place for information is Mozilla Web Docs, where you'll find many examples and even a task to test your skills. It's worth checking out. And don't worry if it's not all clear yet. In the next video, we'll apply this in practice and everything will become clearer. At the end of this video, after so much theory, I'll show you another cool thing we'll be using. Let's go to our website and open the inspector tool. It is very useful for web developers, and now you'll see another of its great features. Do you see the icon in the corner? It looks like a laptop and a phone. When you hover over it, it shows Toggle Device Toolbar. Let's click on it. Okay, now you can see a new toolbar at the top of the page. The first thing on the left is a drop-down menu with different device names. Select one and watch what happens. The page adjusts its size. It looks like it's on that device. Amazing, isn't it? The list includes phones, tablets, and computers, so we can ensure our page looks good on each device type. Next to this list, you'll see the current dimensions of the window. It's useful when you want to set specific sizes. If I choose the responsive option and adjust the window size, the dimensions displayed change too, so we can always see the current width and height. Next, we have two more options, one for zooming and the other for internet connection settings. We'll keep the zoom at the default 100%. We can also skip the internet settings for now. But there's another interesting icon. What does it do? I'll change the window size to the phone one to show you exactly how it works. Okay, and now I click this button and watch the effect. See? This button allows us to change the layout from portrait to landscape. It's like rotating a phone or tablet. People browse the internet in different ways, so this feature will be useful for our work. Alright, you've now learned the most important things about responsive web design, its purpose and how we'll use it. I've also shown you an important tool for responsive web design work. So we can start working on our website and make it responsive. Get ready and see you soon! Alright, you've finished the basic theory on making websites work well on all devices. Now it's time to actually do it. Don't worry if you still need help understanding everything from the last video. Doing it yourself will help clarify everything. Let's get started. First, I want you to look at our website. What do you think? Is there anything we could improve for different screen sizes? Have a little experiment with the website. Change the screen width, use the device toolbar, and write down any points for improvement. Look at each part of the site and note anything wrong. We'll go through this together soon, but I really want to see what you can find on your own. Ready? Hit pause and take a few minutes. I'll wait. How did it go? I hope you found a few things we could improve. Our project looks pretty good already, but it's not perfect. Let's go through the website together now, section by section, to identify areas for improvement. Open the device toolbar with me and set it to the size of a mobile phone, like an iPhone SE. The header looks okay. There's not anything there we need to fix. Next, we have the hero section. As we learned on mobile devices, it's best to stack white elements on top of each other instead of side by side. It makes things more readable. So our first task is to arrange the hero elements vertically. Right now, the image and text are too close and it doesn't look that great. Did you find something to write down in the About Me section? We need to make it more readable. The text is too small right now, the button and icons are wider than the text, and the button text doesn't fit on one line. We need to fix all of this. Also, I suggest stacking the text and the image on top of each other. What do you think? Let's check the project section next. Do you think everything's okay here? Not quite, right? The project cards are small and hard to read, and there's a lot of unused space around them. Remember, it's important on mobile devices to use space well. A larger touch area makes it easier to tap. So I think we need to make the cards bigger. In the skills part of the page, I don't think we need to change anything. The icons are clear and well arranged next to each other, automatically moving to the next line when there's not enough space. It looks fine. However, in the contact section, since this is an interactive part of the site, we should consider stacking the two elements on top of each other. We want users to use the form easily, so let's ensure its fields are big and clear. As for the footer, I don't have any comments at the moment. Do you have any? Okay, we've had some fun and easy tasks until now. Let's get to something a bit more challenging. What do I mean? I'm talking about how the browser is tricking us now. Remember when we use the device toolbar in the browser, We only get a simulation of how our website might look on mobile devices. And our project may look terrible on an iPhone or tablet, even if it looks great in the simulation. Why is that? Because what we see on the device toolbar is still how our website looks on a desktop screen. Alright, it's time for a bit of theory. I will tell you about a very important meta tag that is a foundation for working on responsive web design. A long time ago, when internet websites were being created, nobody worried about phones or any devices other than desktops. There was no need, nobody owned or used them. Websites were designed for computer screens. You may have seen or still see websites that are not adapted to mobile devices at all. The text is too small and not everything fits on the screen. And then mobile devices come in. It changed how websites are designed now. Developers needed a tool that gives them control over how their projects are displayed on different devices. And that's where the viewport meta tag comes into play. It's just one line of code that ensures the page displays correctly on any device. What does it look like? It's a meta tag named viewport, including the content parameter. Setting the width to the device width is our magic spell. Thanks to it, our project is displayed correctly on different devices. The initial scale sets the zoom level. A value of 1 ensures that text, pictures, and other elements appear at a size that's easy for everyone to read and use. Remember this meta tag and always use it. Yes, always, without any exceptions. But our project looks pretty good, right? That's because we've already implemented some responsive web design principles like flexbox and relative units. Now let's do a test and add this meta tag to our site. We add it in the head section where all the other meta tags go. Type a meta tag named viewport with me. And let's include the two settings we talked about, width and initial scale. Please save the file and take a look at our project now. Wow! What a mess! Our project looks terrible now. But thanks to the viewport meta tag, we can use the device toolbar to see how our website really looks on mobile devices now. No more desktop simulations. If you're still wondering why we added the viewport meta tag to our project, check out another example from the W3 Schools website. On the left, you see a website example without this tag. On the right, you see one with the tag. Do you see the difference? That's why you should really include it in every project. Now we've got to review our project again, right? Our list of things to fix needs to be updated. Let's start over with the header. Things could be looking better there now. We've got a few things to fix. First, its width isn't right. We want it to stretch across the full width. Plus, the text and the button are all over the place. Even worse, the menu is now too close to the logo on the left. As you can probably see, the logo, button, and menu items aren't aligned. Some are higher and some are lower. There are 4 main issues we've got to deal with. Okay, what about the hero section? Yes, it's a bit worse here now, but our initial plan is still good. We need to place the text and image one above the other. Next is the About Me section, which has become a complete mess. This section only takes up half the screen's width like the others. There's a big problem. However, don't worry about the website's current look. We have some detective work to find fixes. What we've noted so far for this section still applies. The text is too small, the button needs work, the buttons are wider than the text, and changing the layout to stack elements vertically is still required. Let's add fixing the width to fill the page and then we can move on. Wow, what happened in the project section? Do you see this? The images are completely missing and all the cards are broken. What's more, the cards cover the section's title. What a mess! We must add a few tasks to our list. Fix the images, place the cards under the section title, and adjust the section width. And yes, our earlier decision to make the cards bigger is still important and stays on our to-do list. Now let's go to the section that looked perfect before. Is everything still alright here? As you can see, the skills adjust depending on the available space. That's great, and everything here is in order. As with the other sections, the only issue is that it needs to take up the full page width. Let's add that too. Going through section by section, you'll notice that this width issue repeats. Isn't it strange that the same problem is everywhere? Maybe the problem isn't directly with them. It might be an issue with one of their parent elements, the main, body, or HTML. Sometimes the problem might be entirely different from where you first think. It's good to keep this in mind. Moving back to the website, we're at the Contact section next. Is everything all right here? Definitely not. It's really not looking good. The elements now take up half the page's width, making them very narrow and hard to read. Let's add the width issue to our list. As you can see, we have the same width issue with the footer. Let's add that to our list too. Our list of tasks is ready. Congratulations! Reviewing the project before starting to work is always a good idea. You need to know that special apps and websites help developers analyze their projects. I don't want to overwhelm you with different tools for now. You'll get to know and learn them with experience. We're doing everything manually for now. It's the best way to learn. So, let's start fixing the project. Where do we begin? Let's leave the sections and elements that clearly need their width adjusted for now. First, let's focus on the hero section and work on the image and text. It will be a good warm-up. We'll arrange them one above the other. Do you have any idea how to do this? Here's a little tip. Flexbox will help us here. If you already know the solution, great job. If not, don't worry, I'll help you. We'll use flex direction. In the style.css file, find the hero section. We're interested in the hero class because it contains both elements we want to arrange. As you see, it doesn't have the flex direction property. It means the default value, row, is active. All we need to do is change it to a column, right? Then the elements will stack from top to bottom, just as we want. Write the code with me and let's check the result. It worked! The elements are now one above the other. Awesome! But look at this. I'll now change the dimensions option to responsive and increase the page width. Elements are always vertically aligned. It doesn't look good on desktops. And this is a perfect moment to use breakpoints and media queries. Our goal is for these two elements to be vertical on mobile devices, but side by side on bigger devices like laptops. To do this, we must decide when this change should happen, right? We need to define a specific breakpoint. Now I'll show you commonly used breakpoints for different types of devices. You probably remember them from the previous video. Based on that list, when do you think we should use the column value for flex direction and when is the row value? If you choose just like in the slide, great job! 768 pixels will be our breakpoint when the change happens. Above it, we have laptops, desktops, and larger screens, where the hero section with elements side by side will look best. Below 768 pixels, we'll set them one on top of the other. This way, the hero section will be readable on mobile devices and tablets. Let's do this! First, I suggest creating a new file for media queries and breakpoints to avoid confusion. Let's call it responsive.css, a commonly used name for such a file. How should we write what we've decided? Remember the last lesson on writing media queries? We start with add media, then put the condition that needs to be met in quotes and open a bracket. What condition do you think we should write here? For example, if we want to apply styles for devices with a width below or equal 768 pixels, the max width will be 768 pixels. Okay, and inside, let's write the hero class and set the flex direction property to a column. This way, we have prepared the code for smaller devices. But what about larger devices? We want to display the elements side by side for them, right? So, in the style.css file, we need to change the flex direction value to row. Everything's set, let's check the result. Oops, something's not right. The elements are still side by side, no matter the device's width. Do you know why? Remember, we must include this new file in the HTML's head section for its styles to take effect. So, copy the line with the style.css file, paste it below, and change the file name to responsive.css. And now take a look. When I adjust the window width, the layout of the elements changes as we want. Good job! Now I have a question. Could we write this in another way? We could code it using min width instead of max width. Then the pixel value would be 769 pixels. And then we'd need to switch the flex direction values. In the responsive file as row and in the style.css file as column. The effect will be the same. We'll use only max width for consistency in our project. But if you're curious about when to use max versus min, read more about the two approaches in responsive web design: mobile first and desktop first. That's beyond the scope of our course for now. Let's rewrite the code to the initial version. Now let's do something similar in the About Me section. Find the styles for the About Me section in the style.css file. We have an About class that includes an image and text. Let's add a flex direction set to row to it. In the responsive file, under the hero class, add the About class and set flex direction to a column. It still needs to look better, but the layout is correct. We can also do the same with the contact section. This time, it's your task. Please do it now on your own, like in the hero and about sections. Are you ready? Start now! That wasn't too hard, was it? I hope you've got it. Okay, our project isn't looking amazing yet, but we've made important initial work. Now let's try to solve the biggest issue of today's work: getting the right width for all sections and the page. Our task list shows this issue in many sections. If we can fix it, working on the other elements will be easier. How do you think? Why do these width problems happen? Usually, one specific thing on the page is causing trouble. To find it, we should look at our project on a really small phone, like an iPhone SE. This way you can clearly see where the problems are. You'll notice that most sections don't fit the screen right, except for the header, where the menu is too wide, the Hero section image, and the About section, where the social media icons are too big. These are the areas we need to fix. But I'll tell you a secret. We'll skip the header for now. We'll fix it later when we work on JavaScript. That's when we'll change how it looks and works, including making a hamburger menu. It's a very popular element in web development. You'll learn how to create it. For now, let's hide the header. I'll show you how. To hide an element, we use a display property set to none. Please also comment out the current line where we set the display property to flex. And remember to write a comment to remind us to fix it later. Awesome! Next, let's look at the social media icons in the About Me section. For now, we'll remove them from the page just like the header. Also remember to add a comment about it. As you can see, our fix only partly solved the problem. We still need to work on the page's width. Let's go through the project again, step by step. In the Hero section, the text and the button look fine. But what about below that? Image is too big. It's wider than the rest of the page. Do you see it? If we check it in the inspector, it's 450 pixels wide, exactly as we set in the HTML code. However, the window width is only 375 pixels at the moment. The image size is too big. Let's fix that. I'll show you a fantastic way to deal with images. Two short magical lines of code make every image look great and responsive. It adjusts its size to fit the device window. It's a tip you'll want to remember because it's incredibly useful. Here it is. Simply set the image width to 100% and its height to auto. Auto height lets the browser figure out the best height for the image, so it always looks with good proportions. With this simple code, our image will resize to fit any device screen. Look at this. I switched the toolbar to responsive mode. As I adjust the window's width, the picture's size changes too. Isn't that awesome? This code snippet is a game changer. Now it looks like the sections finally have the correct width. As you can see, this problem was a bit complicated and different elements caused trouble. the header, icons in the About Me section, and the image in the Hero section. It was challenging, but you must know that the programmer's job is solving complex problems too. Of course, as you know, we haven't solved the problem for good. We've only removed a few elements causing problems. We still need to work on them to display correctly. But for now, by turning off the header and icons, we can focus more easily on fixing the other sections and elements. Let's take a short break and make yourself a coffee or tea. We'll move on to sections next. See you soon! Fixing websites to look right on all screens can be tough. We'll carefully review each section in this part of our lesson, so expect some challenges. First, look at the Hero section. Our list says we fixed everything here. But after changing how things look, we've got two new problems. It's normal to fix one thing and then see other things that need fixing, especially when working with CSS. You might notice the button is a little hidden by the image. We should make some more room here. Also, we don't need all that extra space around these pardon fonts. There's too much empty space on the top and bottom, right? Let's first make some space between the image and the button. We can do this in many ways, but I think we should add some space at the bottom of the Hero Content class. We'll make it the same size as the space above the button, which is 3 rem. Now the section looks much better. However, there is still a big space between the edges of the screen and the Hero content. The code shows that the padding is 9.375 rem at the top and bottom, and 5 rem on the right and left sides. When we were working on the design, it looked fine because we looked at it on a bigger screen. But now it doesn't look as good. What can we do about it? You might remember, I hope, from earlier lessons that we use rem units to decide how big things like padding should be. Rem units change size based on the root element font size, which is usually an HTML element. Great, but are we using this knowledge so far? Not really. Yes, we wrote the padding in rem units, but let's check if this padding differs from the padding on a desktop screen. I'm looking at it on an iPhone SE screen right now. Let's see how much the padding of the Hero section is in pixels. To do this, we must go to the Computed tab, scroll down a bit, and find the padding. The top and bottom padding is 150 pixels, and the right and left are 80 pixels. Now let's see what values we find when we change the screen size to wider like an iPad Pro. Look, the padding value is exactly the same. Nothing has changed. Do you know why our rem units aren't working as they should? The reason is simple. Remember how rem units work. Rem units depend on the font size of the HTML, not the screen size. Let's look at the font size of the HTML element together. It's 16 pixels on a widescreen and an iPhone SE. So the padding stays the same because the font size doesn't change. But we want it to be smaller if the device is smaller, right? What can we do to take advantage of rem units? We need to change the font size on smaller devices to be smaller. But be careful. Here, we shouldn't use fonts that are too small. So we'll reduce the font size to 14 pixels. So let's write in the media queries HTML element, then set its font size to 14 pixels. Let's also set the default font size for the HTML element to 16 pixels. As we checked before, the default font size was indeed 16 pixels, but different browsers have different default settings. We want our project to look the same no matter which browser someone uses. After doing this, you'll see the font size has become smaller in the Hero section and all over our website. That's exactly what we wanted. Remember how we sometimes use rem units for font sizes, paddings, or margins? This way, they all scale down on smaller screens too. Let's go back to the Hero section's padding. In the Computed tab, we'll check again how big the padding is now on an iPhone SE. Look! Now the top and bottom padding is 131.25 pixels, and the right and left are 70 pixels. Great, right? We didn't change the padding in the media queries. We just changed the font size of the HTML. This shows the power of using relative units. Wonderful! But do you think this padding, although smaller, is still a bit too much? This can happen when working with relative units, and you must be prepared for it. Sometimes we need to adjust some elements a bit more. So we'll adjust this padding to fit our needs even better. Let's set it on devices below or equal 768 pixels to about half smaller, so 4.5 rem on the top and bottom, and 2.5 rem on the sides. Okay, now the Hero section really looks great, doesn't it? Did you notice that we've been coding for devices from the smallest up to 768 pixels so far? I like working this way because it's simple. What looks good on a smaller tablet often looks just as good on a smaller phone. However, sometimes we'll need to adjust some elements even more. We'll do this as we continue working. For now, the Hero section looks great both on a smaller phone and on a tablet. We can wait to write code for other breakpoints. Let's move on and see how the About Me section looks after we changed the HTML font size to 14 pixels. The text is definitely a bit smaller, but as you can see, the picture is quite small. It only takes up half the page's width, and the text still has a lot of padding around it. We're going to fix that. We want the picture to stretch out to fill the whole page width, keeping it looking nice. The text should also take up the full width of the page and have less padding, don't you think? Now, let's set our screen width to 768 pixels, our breakpoint, to see better how bad these elements look. Dive into the code with me and you'll see the problem. The picture, the About Image Container class, is only set to be 50% wide. The text section about content is the same. This was great where the elements were next to each other. But now when they're one on top of the other, we can't leave it like that. We want these elements to take up the full width, right? So we need to set their width to 100%. Let's do that in the code. Enter 100% width for both the About Image Container and About Content. Great, let's check if this section looks better now. And it's definitely better, right? When I resize the window, the image adjusts its size while keeping its proportions. It looks good. But what about the text? It still needs to look better on a smaller device. What do we need to do? We need to work on the padding. It's a similar situation to the hero section. The padding is indeed smaller, but still too big. As you can see, the padding for about content is set to 8 rem. Let's also cut that in half to 4 rem. The text looks much better now. But do you see that? There's more space at the bottom than at the top, right? We set the padding to be the same all the way round, right? Let's dig into the code to find out why it's different. It's clear now. The About content P has an extra bottom margin, creating space before the button and social media icons. Let's leave that margin and bring back any hidden elements. Now's the time to fix them. Remove the About content info line. Now on a smaller screen, the icons still extend beyond the edge. How do you think we can arrange these elements to look better? I think the best option is to have the button right below the text and the social media icons just below the button. Sure, we could make these elements smaller to fit them in one line, but there's a big downside. Smaller icons are harder to tap on. That's why stacking them one after the other seems better. How to do this? That's a task for you. Try to arrange the elements so the button is above the icons. But remember to keep the icons side by side. I'm showing you the final effect on the screen now. There's also a little gap between the button and the icons, and all the elements are nicely centered. Do this using our current media query of 768 pixels. Go ahead and try to do this. Okay, let's check the solution now. The most important change is setting the flex direction property to the column value for the About content info. Inside it, there's a call to action button and social media icons, so that this change will put the button above the icons. Let's add a 3 rem bottom margin to About call to action class to keep the spacing consistent. Great! The last thing left is centering the elements. You see the icons are a bit to the right. That's because of a left margin. We added this so the icons would have some space from the button when they are in a line. Let's change this margin value to 0 and it's done. The About Me section looks awesome. We can move on, right? Let's see what's happening in the Projects section. The pictures are hard to see or sometimes not visible at all. When I narrow the browser window, they cover the section title completely. This problem is because we set the width of the project cards to 32%. The browser tries to keep 3 cards side by side, making them so small that the images are hard to see behind the text. But we don't want 3 cards side by side on mobile devices. It would be much better if each card has its own line, making them easy to read and click. How to do this? There are a few ways. One quick fix is to change the width setting to auto, letting the browser figure out the best layout. It's an easy and effective approach. Another way is to use percentages to decide how much space each card should use based on the screen size. Remember, we tried making them 32 pixels wide to fit 3 in a row, but that only sometimes works well. On smaller screens, you might get only 2 cards in a line. If you learned about the calc method from the extra video and tried to use it, that's great. Why? Because using the calc method is a more precise way to arrange cards. In a separate extra video, I'll show you how to set the right number of cards for each media query using calc. You'll find it right after this episode. It's a bit more complex, but a smart way to manage your layout. You might want to skip this if you prefer to keep things simple. But if you're curious and want to dive deeper, I highly recommend watching it. For now, we'll stick to the simplest solution for our project cards. Let the browser decide and set the card width to auto. The card will use as much space as possible in any situation and on any screen size. Also, how about we make the cards even bigger by cutting the padding on the right and left sides of the project's content class in half. Yes, now it looks much better. Let's also cut the padding of the H3 element in half. Great, now the cards looks nice on both phones and tablets. And what about larger devices? Look, at some point, the cards line up 3 in a row. Looks awesome, right? So we can check off the task of making the cards bigger. By using space better, the cards got big enough to look great. Changing the card width also solved another problem. The cards overlapping the section title. Suddenly, everything looks just right. Sometimes, as you see, one small change can make a big difference. The last thing I'd fix is the sections padding. Let's reduce it by half, just like we did with other sections, so we have 4 rem of padding at the top and bottom, and 0 on the sides. Let's apply this to the project's class. Great, now this section also looks great. And let's move on. The skills section only had one width issue. Since we solved that issue elsewhere in the project, it's no longer a problem. Let's check how the icons look on various devices using the responsive mode and manually changing the window width or by checking different devices. I find the responsive mode better for spotting issues. The icons are looking good and nicely adjusted across lines. The only improvement needed is again reducing the padding to match the rest of the website. So let's adjust the padding for the skills class to be the same as for the project class. Alright, the section looks ready. Now let's go to the last section, contact. We've got quite a mess here. What happened? Let's look into the code. As you might have noticed, we have a similar issue to the one we did with the About Me section. The elements are squeezed because the contact info and contact form classes are set to 50% width. While this looked good on a desktop with the elements side by side, it's not what we want here. We want these 2 elements to stack one on top of the other. So let's give them a width of 100% and see what changes. Yes, that's already much better, but it still needs improvement, right? Let's start with the form and see why it's so narrow in the inspector. It has a lot of padding on both sides and also at the top. This is the same issue we've seen in other sections. Let's reduce this padding by half. Set the padding to 4 rem at the top and bottom and 2.5 rem on the sides for the contact class. Great! Now the form is perfect. Now what about the space below the submit button? We need to separate the form and contact info, right? Let's add some margin below the button. But how many exactly? We can make it similar to the About Me section, remember? We made a space of 3 rem between the text and icons. So let's add it to the contact form class. The form looks great, and we can now focus on contact info. It looks good already, so we'll make only small fixes here. This section looks fine on larger screens when we adjust the window size. The issue comes up when we get down to font sizes around 300 pixels wide. It looks too tight. Let's give it some more space. In the code, the contact info card class has a width of 75%. What if we turn off that setting? The card now takes up more space and looks better. So let's set its width to 100% for mobile devices. Perfect! The effect is now really good. Alright, what's left to do? We have the footer. On smaller devices, the contents overlap and the text goes on to the next line. A good approach for mobile footers is to stack the content vertically instead of keeping it in one line. We've done this several times today, so it's time for another task for you. Please arrange the footer content so that the text "Made with Love" by Jane Doe is on top, social media icons are below, and everything is nicely centered. Are you ready? Go for it! It was an easy task. Here's how to solve it. We stack everything vertically by setting the footer's flex direction to the column. Simple, right? We might want to add a little gap between these stacked items, say about 0.625 rem, to match the gap above the footer. Whether you add this gap to the paragraph or the social media icons doesn't really matter. I added it to the social media class, remembering to include the footer class first, so it only affects elements inside the footer. Is our website work done? It might seem so, but it's always good to double-check to ensure we got everything. In the next episode, we'll take a closer look and you'll see a few things still need fixing. We also need to optimize our code a bit. We'll get to that shortly. See you in a moment. Welcome to this super short video. First off, I'm glad you decided to spend some time learning more advanced techniques with me. You're now unstoppable. The calc method we've talked about is really great. It's very precise because it does calculations on the fly. If you remember, it lets us not worry about the gaps between cards. We can just include the gap in our calculations. The percentage method is also not bad, but adding space between cards can mess up calculations. So if we have a card width set to 32% and make the windows smaller, we end up with only 2 cards in a line instead of 3. That happens because of the gap we added between the cards. In this video, we want to achieve the following setup. We want only 1 card per line on mobile devices, limited to a common breakpoint of 480 pixels. Above that, up to 768 pixels on tablets, we'll have 2 cards per line. And above that, we'll set it to 3 cards. How do we do this? First, look at the formula we've used before and what each part means. When we wanted to place 3 cards next to each other, we wrote it like this. We started with percentage width of 1 card and subtracted the total gap area width divided by 3. Let's make this the default setting. This way, on any window width above 768 pixels, we'll have 3 cards in a row. Okay, let's check if it works. Yes, everything is correct. No matter how wide I make the browser window, we always have 3 cards in a row. Now let's work on the other settings. For fonts up to 480 pixels wide, we want to set 1 card per line. Do we need the calc method for this? Not at all. We can just set the card width to 100%, and that's it. Let's start by adding the right media query. Inside, let's write the project's project class and set the width to 100%. Let's check to ensure everything works right. Yes, it's all good. Now let's deal with widths above 480 pixels and below 768 pixels. Where should we write this? In a media query for max width 768 pixels, of course. Now let's think about the formula to set 2 cards in a line this time. Let's start with the percentage value. For 3 cards in a row, we used 33.33%, right? So, what would it be for 2 cards? It's going to be 50%, which means half. Now let's talk about the gap value. When we have 2 cards next to each other, we don't have to add 2 gap values, right? There's just 1 gap between the cards. So we don't multiply by 2. We just use the gap value, which is 1.5 rem. Since we only have 2 cards, we divide this by 2, not 3. This way, 2 cards effectively fill the window width, taking up as much space as possible. Now let's see if the cards look good in every situation. Above 768 pixels, when the layout shifts to 3 cards in a row, the window seems too narrow for the cards to be big enough, right? I think we can add another breakpoint from our list, 1024 pixels. Only above this point, we'll have 3 cards in a row. Below it, there will be 2. Let's copy and remove our prepared code from the media query with max width of 768 pixels. At the top, let's add a new media query with a max width of 1024 pixels and paste the code there. Let's check the final effect at different window widths. Awesome! The cards change their layout exactly how we want it. As you can see, the calc method allows us to manage the layout of cards precisely and predictably. It's an amazing tool in CSS that is useful in many other scenarios too. So it's good to know how to use it. That's all for this video. It's time to get back to work. See you in a bit. Great job! You've made it through a really hard topic. Responsive web design is a big and challenging subject, especially for beginners. But you're doing awesome. Congratulations! Our project looks good at first glance, right? But we still need to make some fixes, and we'll handle those now. We'll review the project again, checking each part on different devices. Let's start with the Hero section, since we're leaving the header hidden for now, and we'll deal with it tomorrow. In the inspector, switch to Responsive View and check out how this section looks on phones. Does it look alright? I think the full stack developer text is too big. Also, it would be cool if the text and button were centered like the image. Watch this section as I make the window bigger to see where we need these changes. For sure, below 480 pixels, we should make these adjustments. But between 480 pixels and 768 pixels wide, the text size is fine. So, in that range, let's just center everything and leave the font size as is. The last fix is when the window is between 769 pixels and 1024 pixel wide. It feels a bit squeezed, right? Maybe we should keep the one below another layout up to 1024 pixels wide. Okay, you've got a plan. Your job is to make the font size for Hero Content heading to rem below 480 pixels, below 480 pixels and up to 1024 pixels, make sure all text and the button are centered. This might need an extra media query, and if you followed the calc video, you're ready. Also, move the Hero class code inside the media query for max width 1024 pixels. Should the Hero Content code move too? You need to find out. And how did it go? Let's look at the code. I made two new media queries for max widths of 480 pixels and 1024 pixels. In the 124 pixels one, I moved the Hero class and Hero Content class code with the bottom margin. I removed this code from the 768 pixels query. Up to 480 pixels in width, I set the font size for Hero Content heading to 2 rem. And that's pretty much it. The Hero section now looks great in any situation. We can move on. Get ready because you'll also make some fixes in the About Me section. This section looks very good, up to 768 pixels in width. We did a good job here. However, we have a problem when the window is between 769 pixels and 1024 pixels wide. The social media icons go out of the window and the button text splits into two lines. Also, it looks like there's too much padding, right? Now, let's fix this section so that up to 1024 pixels wide, content has 4 rem of padding on each side. The button and social media icons are stacked like we did it up to 768 pixels wide and centered with proper spacing between them. What's important is that the picture and content should be side by side, not one on top of the other. Please do this carefully. Sometimes you might need to add or move some code elsewhere. Watch what happens after each change and double-check if it looks right at other breakpoints. Let's get to work. Are you ready to review the solution? I moved the padding for the About Content class to a media query for max width 1024 pixels. I left the line of code that sets the width to 100% in its original place. I didn't move that. Then I also moved the styles for the About Content info class. I did the same with the About Call to Action and About Social Media classes for the spacing. With these changes, this section looks great between 768 pixels and 1024 pixels width. But what about on even wider screens? The button text still wraps to a new line. Does the content still not fit? Maybe the initial padding is too much. Let's try changing it from 8 rem to 5 rem and check. Now it looks much better, so we'll keep that. Let's ensure the About Me section looks good at all widths one last time. Yes, it looks like we're all done here. Let's move on. I see no issues checking the project section at different widths. The cards are visible, big, and easy to click on all devices, so there is no extra work here. And the skills section? The icons shift between lines nicely and are well organized. The padding changes to bigger at the right breakpoint. Everything looks fine. Alright, let's move on to the contact section. Everything looks great up to the 768 pixels breakpoint. We've made it quite well. However, there's a tiny fix for widths up to 480 pixels. Do you see the part with the social media icons? The text doesn't look nice. Let's move it above the icons. How? Remember, we wrote special code for this with a last of type pseudo class. Copy that into the responsive file and set its flex direction to the column. Next, copy the same element name add the social media class and give it a top margin of 0.625 rem, just like we did for the footer social media. Now the icons look amazing. When I resize the window, the icons and text shift perfectly. It all looks good until we hit 768 pixels. But then we have some problems above this breakpoint. Elements try to sit side by side on slightly wider screens, but still look too tight. What could be the solution here? To make the form big, readable and easy to click, I'd suggest moving the styles we set in the media query for max width 768 pixels to the one for 1024 pixels. I would only leave the section's padding as it is, because the section looks better on a wider screen with the default larger padding. Let's do this. I'm copying the styles for the contact, contact form, contact info, and contact info card to the media query for max width 1024 pixels, leaving only the padding line from the contact class in its original place. Now everything up to 1024 pixels wide is readable and looks good. But above 1024 pixels, we're back to the issue with social media icons we saw on smaller phones. Let's fix it by making the contact info size larger from 75% to 80%. Perfect. We'll also add another media query for devices with a max width of 1200 pixels. We'll insert the code we used for the max 480 pixels media query inside it. For devices with screen widths up to 1200 pixels, text and icons will stack one above the other, switching to a side-by-side layout above it. Let's check if the contact section now looks good under all conditions. Yes, it's all right now. For a final check, let's look at the footer section. Everything seems set and the footer changes its layout nicely. Let's check how the whole website looks on various devices again. Click through different device names as I did and check how the site appears in different orientations by hitting the rotate button. Personally, I don't see any issues at this point, so congratulations! Together, we refined our project for responsive web design. No matter what device a user views this page on, it will always look great. Huge congratulations! This is a big achievement in your developer journey. But we're not quite done with this video. We need to adjust the code in the responsive.css file. First, ensure your media queries are organized from the largest to the smallest to avoid confusion. Is there anything else missing in the code? Let's add comments showing which section each piece of code relates to keep things clear and consistent. And you know how to do this, right? Just copy a comment like contact section styles and place it at every breakpoint that includes code for that section. This is your final task. I hope you'll handle it on your own. That's it for now, and I'll see you tomorrow. Rest up and gather some energy because starting tomorrow, we will dive into a fascinating and challenging course part. We'll learn JavaScript. I'm excited, and how about you? See you soon!